Hello everyone, welcome back to another Animal Note. This week we're going to be discussing this phenomenal and super short book called The Flight of the Hummingbird. Now the parable itself has origins among the Quechan people of South America and the Haida of North Pacific. But this book that we're reviewing has been interpreted by Nicole Nagolanas, along with some commentary and afterword from Wangari Maathai and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Now this book, in my opinion, is a must-have for any conservationist, environmentalist, or just someone who wants to make a difference in the world. The story and the afterword themselves are only 50 pages long, but the ideas presented could fill encyclopedias, and I'm sure that you will enjoy them as much as I have, so let's dive right in. We have some big ideas, and since this story is so short, our first big idea, I'm just going to start by reading it in its entirety. And this is the story of the great forest that caught on fire. Oh, there's no pictures here. Here we go. Beautiful, beautiful artwork along with the story. The terrible fire raged and burned. All the animals were afraid and fled from their homes. The elephant and the tiger, the beaver and the bear all ran, and above them, the birds flew in a panic. They huddled at the edge of the forest and watched. All the creatures gathered, except for one. Only Dukduktia, the little hummingbird, would not abandon the forest. Dukduktia flew quickly to the stream, and she picked up a single drop of water in her beak. She then flew back and dropped the water on the fire. Again, she flew to the stream and brought back another drop, and so she continued, back and forth, back and forth. The other animals watched as the hummingbird's tiny body fly against the enormous fire, and they were frightened. They called out to her, warning Dukduktia of the dangers of the smoke and of the heat. "What can I do?" sobbed the rabbit. "The fire is much too hot." "There is too much smoke," howled the wolf. "My wings will burn. My beak is too small," cried the owl. But the hummingbird persisted. She flew to and fro, picking up more water and dropping it bead by bead onto the burning forest. Finally, Big Bear said, "Little Dukduktia, what are you doing?" Without stopping, the hummingbird looked down at her friends, and she said, "I am doing what I can." Now, okay, so this short story is one gigantic big idea, but it's those last 6 words I want to focus on, and I actually get emotional whenever I read this tale, because it truly, truly embodies everything that I teach with ZooFit. Now, our big idea number 1 is, I'm doing what I can. Now, often people come to me when they feel an enormous, insurmountable obstacles or stress because they don't feel like what they're doing matters, both in fitness and in conservation. And ZooFit is about sustainability, not just what's sustainable for the earth, but sustainable for ourselves as well. And we can't do everything. We can only do what we can do. And I ask my clients, participants, this simple question: at the end of the day, did you do your utmost best? Now, I don't mean pushing yourself so far past your limits that you can't maintain the momentum, but did you do everything you could to meet your goals, to eat right, to do your part for conservation, and to get just a little bit better? And the answer is yes, then that is cause for celebration. Not everyone can do everything. And if your best is simply refusing a plastic straw when you go out to eat, then I salute you and I sincerely thank you for doing your part. And if your best is installing solar power panels for your entire community, then that's fantastic too. Keep up that amazing work. But it's important that we look at our actions and determine if we are doing what we can. Not what our neighbors are doing, not what big corporations or the government or the rich and famous. Are we doing our part, doing the best that we can do? That, to me, is the most important part. And this is the most important part because it's often that what we look at issues surrounding us, the Australian bushfires, the coronavirus, the destruction of the Amazon rainforest, the decimation of the Great Barrier Reef, the Pacific Ocean garbage patch. We see these huge ordeals that we have to face, and it feels just completely overwhelming. And if you try to take that all on yourself, it truly is overwhelming. But the thing is, we don't have to take those on, not just the way you're thinking. And Byron Katie is an author with dozens of self-improvement books demonstrating how to handle situations just like this. In her book, Loving What Is, Katie shows us how to look at situations, determine how much worry, anxiety to give over to them by how much control we have over it. And our point made in regards of how the Hummingbird deals with the crisis, you can't stop a big corporation from destroying the rainforest, but you can stop buying their products. So you may not have started the Australian bushfires, and you may not have the ability to stop them burning, but what do you have control over? And so we can change our behavior where we live and help others in other regions that are often affected by wildfires. Climate change and deforestation are two culprits which lead out of control fires. And yeah, we didn't start the fire, but our action can have an effect on how bad they can get. So focusing on what we do have control over will help us do our part each and every day, and doing what we can to take care of ourselves, our loved ones, and then ultimately the world. Now, all these ideas basically just start leading into one another, but the next one that we're going to talk about is the tiny micro wins. Inconsequential actions still make a difference. It says Holiness the Dalai Lama wrote an afterword to the book called The Universal Responsibility, and in his own words he says, "It is up to us as individuals to do what we can, however little that may be. Just because switching off the light when leaving the room seems inconsequential, it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it." That reminds me of another powerful parable often shared of the star thrower. And one day, an old man was walking along the beach, and that was littered with just thousands of starfish that had been washed ashore by the high tide. So as he's walking, he comes across a young boy who eagerly is throwing starfish back into the ocean one by one. Now, puzzled, the man looks at the boy and asks what he is doing. Without stopping from his task, the boy simply replies, "I'm saving the starfish." So the old man chuckles and says, "Son, there are thousands of starfish, sea stars, and only one of you. What difference can you make?" And many of you, if you've heard this, know what's coming next. The boy picks up a sea star and gently tosses it back in the water and turns to the man. Made a difference to that one. This is very powerful, what the story and what the Dalai Lama says, and it's so right on. Is the hummingbird going to put out a terrible raging forest fire with one drop at a time? Her efforts may seem inconsequential, but her effect on the fire isn't the point. It really isn't the point at all. She is being a shining, radiant exemplar, a hero who is showing us what we can do. We can drop one droplet of water, one at a time, doing our part. And each drop of water by themselves isn't going to make or break the goal, challenge, or the issue. But added together, they do make a significant contribution towards the solution. So my question for you is, what is your drop of water? Maybe it's eliminating straws. Maybe it's walking to the store instead of driving. It could be creating a bright line with a grocery store to not buy any products made from or wrapped in plastic. What's the one thing that you are doing that is on its own may not make a huge difference, but we still know it's the right thing to do? Just because eliminating one plastic straw from being thrown away won't save the ocean doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. And this isn't about one thing either. It's about the mentality and the motivation of doing our part. And if I can do without a straw today, maybe I can do without a plastic bag tomorrow. Or maybe I can do without the fast food lunch and bring my own meal from home. The inconsequential things all add up, and they keep us motivated to keep dropping water on the fire. And it also inspires others, which is big idea number 3. Imagine what we could do together. Now, as Michael tells us in his wonderful rendition of The Flight of the Hummingbird, when we put away the notion of that greatness is essential to success, then we expand into our full capacity. The hummingbird's faith in the power of the small and in herself is illustrated by her heroic contribution, the act of simply doing what she can alone. And just imagine that many, most, or even all of the other animals did what they could. They might never know whether the problem was solved by their individual efforts, but their contribution would increase the likelihood that many beads of water would definitely overcome the fire. And just imagine how impactful it would be if I'm doing what I can was not the end of the story, but just the middle. Imagine Duktia inspiring the entire community to each grab their own beads of water, and the forest animals put the fire out together. All because the hummingbird started by doing what she could. Yeah, maybe our individual efforts won't make that much of a difference, but when we combine them with the other small individual actions, we can literally change the world and fix most of these issues that we are facing today. During one of my annual visits to see my family in South Carolina, my mother and I were once eating out at this popular cafe, and I was using my reusable bamboo utensils instead of the plastic forks provided by the cafe. And it's just something I've gotten really used to, but I realized it must have seemed pretty extraordinary to some of the other patrons because a couple people actually walking past us were pointing at us and mimicked eating as they walked by. And I was actually pretty proud of that moment. Does using my own utensils at a restaurant make that huge of a difference? Maybe, maybe not. I don't eat out that often, so it's possible that when I do go out to eat and I do use my own utensils, not only am I making a small difference, but I'm inspiring someone else to do the same. And that, my friends, does make a huge difference. And doing these things together doesn't make it a huge difference. It makes it a lasting difference too. It's so much easier to start taking care of ourselves, our community, and our planet now, doing it absolutely now when it is still easy, so it becomes a habit. And doing these small things and inspiring others to do their share sparks a movement where conservation and healthy habits are literally the easiest thing to do. That way it stays an easy habit. So we don't have to scramble to adjust to a huge necessary change in our lives, simply by doing what we can now, which is basically the gist of our next big idea. Do the small, inconsequential stuff so that we can avoid the harder, insurmountable problems later. His Holiness the Dalai Lama also states in his commentary, if people begin to act with genuine compassion for everyone, we can still protect each other and the natural environment. This is much easier than having to adapt to the severe and incomprehensible environmental conditions projected for the future. Now, this idea does remind me a little bit of me and my husband's situation. Now, a couple of years ago, Chris was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. And it shook us for a little while, and we still don't fully understand how he got this disease. But one thing that we are eternally grateful for is our healthy lifestyle that we had already established and already installed years before. Because of our little actions that we took together, adjusting to a new way of taking care of ourselves, because we were in this together, was way, way easier than any doctor actually imagined. Instead of these monstrous changes to our eating habits and workout program, we just had to make tiny little tweaks. And we were able to keep Chris off of dialysis until he found a donor and had a kidney transplant. And then after the transplant, we needed to make some more adjustments, which were also easier because they weren't these ginormous lifestyle changes. This is also the main idea behind Brian Johnson's optimized program. And in his program, he often talks about micro wins, the small wins which compound to create a huge victory in our health, productivity, self-improvement, and for me and ZooFit, making a bigger difference in our conservation efforts. By doing what we can, we have a profound effect on the future. Creating healthy habits in the present makes doing the tasks and actions easy down the road. So if you practice bringing your own water bottle or coffee mug everywhere you go, it is second nature for you, and you don't have to think about what you're going to do if you get thirsty. You grab your water bottle or you use your mug to get a drink. So once again, what are your drops of water that you can easily start doing today? And how will it help build to a river in the future by making small incremental gains that add up? Now finally, our final big idea for this note is actually quite simple, but for me a little bit on the mind-blowing side. It is not the environment which needs fixing. And his final quote from the Dalai Lama is probably the most enlightening. He says, "We need to teach people that the environment is the direct bearing of on our own benefit. We need to teach them to understand the need for environmental protection and how conservation directly aids our own survival. The environment doesn't need fixing. It is our behavior in relation to it that needs to change." I'm just going to stay here for just a few seconds with my mouth dropped open. Yeah, it's not the environment that needs fixing. It's us. And it's this sort of a Zen way to put it too. Again, coming from the Dalai Lama, I wouldn't expect anything less. But there's nothing actually wrong with the environment that can't be solved simply by changing our own actions. Now, I know my immediate reaction to that is to try to think of an instance where the environment does need fixing. Coral bleaching, for example. It's definitely an indication that our world is at a tipping point. But it's not us fixing the coral reefs that will help. The coral reefs will heal themselves when our behavior changes to better protect it. Now this goes on and on. Even in the story, the hummingbird isn't out to fix the forest. She's only focused on her actions and her behavior, doing what she can to be a part of the solution. Now the big topic that's in the world right now is the coronavirus. Now right now we don't have a vaccine or a cure. So there's no fixing coronavirus as of yet. The only thing we can do to protect ourselves is changing our behavior, social distancing, washing our hands, covering our coughs. It's not the environment, it's our behavior in relation to that environment. Honestly, my mind is blown when I think about it in that terms. It's not the environment that needs to fix. We need to change our behavior in relation to the environment. So what question or what behavior can we change to make a difference in the world? Can we start doing that today? And showing others how to better take care of ourselves by taking care of the planet. Let's be radiant exemplars in doing what we can, inspiring others to be hummingbirds for everything in our daily lives. So that just about sums up my animal note for this amazing, amazing, amazing little book. Let's end it with a couple of quotes. We have Theodore Roosevelt says, "Do what you can with what you have and where you are." Abraham Maslow once said, "What a man can be, he must be." One of the contributors, Michelle Benjamin, says, "It is not necessarily the largest, most courageous, or loudest animal that can do the most good or have the greatest influence. Rather, it is those who are not afraid to act and who are aware of what is at stake that can make the biggest difference. And finally, Margaret Mead stated once, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Now that's just about it that is it for The Flight of the Hummingbird by Michael Nicole. Love his last name, Lagulananas, with the Wangari Maathai and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Such a powerful book. I have a link below where you can buy this on Amazon. Again, powerful book. Which big idea stuck out to you the most? So let me know, and let's start rocking our hummingbird mentality today.